Lions fans, welcome to the soccer preview here on MolloyLions.com. I'm Rick Rossetto, joined by the head coach of both the men's and women's soccer programs, Danny Longo, for our preseason preview video. We usually do this video outdoors, but the rain kind of forced us inside, but no big deal, as Danny and I are very happy to join you here for this interview. So Danny, going into this season, let's talk first about the men's team. Had 10 wins last year, 5 in conference, did a nice job in conference till the end of the season and kind of gave out a little bit. Let's recap that season a little bit. You had some highs, some lows. How did you see it from your end?
Deep breath is probably the answer. I mean, we were in the mix to make the NCAA tournament, obviously to make the conference tournament for the last week. I think our depth was a little bit of an issue. We had a smaller roster than we do this year. I think the talent was a little bit less last year than it is this year. So when we did have some key injuries and unfortunate cards late in the year, you know, we were a little bit strapped the last week. That's not to make any excuses. We got beat. We deserve to get beat in every one of those games. But I think if we could redo those that week and could have went 2-1, finished 12-4, I don't think it would have been good enough to make the tournament, but it would have been good enough to make the conference tournament, and it would have felt like a better year. It was a big jump from the prior year, but even still, the prior year we made the conference tournament. So we went up in wins and didn't make the conference playoffs. So it was a little disheartening, but overall it was a big jump for the program.
I want to talk about the players that are coming back, but before I do that, let's talk about the players that you lost, specifically those guys on the defensive back line, guys like Ryan Fackner and Stephen Palomini and George Sinecor, who were really big for you on your defensive side. Having to replace one defender I know is difficult, but when it's 3 guys of that caliber, George and Stephen, and as well with just the other guys that you're losing too, Ryan as well, what does that do for you losing those guys? Talk a little bit about what they meant to your program as well.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts a lot. Those 3 kids in particular, you couldn't have said 3 better names. I mean, Ryan had transferred in from Suffolk, but played here for 4 years, and now is in the NYPD, which is awesome. George came over from Hofstra, but played here for 4 years, and then Stephen was 4 years with us from the beginning. All 3 of those kids are great kids, great program kids, you know, will always be back, you know, things like that. I think they enjoyed their time, we enjoyed their time, and they're going to be lost hugely. The one other kid that we thought we would have lost back there was Steven Jimenez, who is back for another year, so that helps. If we would have lost him as well, all 4, it really would have been tough. But you know, it's difficult to replace them right now during the preseason. I think our question mark is back there, and a lot of it has to do because those guys are lost. Right. But I think slowly but surely it's coming together. They're going to be missed, but you know, like every year you lose kids and you got to just step up and move forward.
It's good you mentioned Steve Jimenez, because that transitions well to the returning guys, Steven Tapetto back in goal for you, and that offense, which was, I think, a lot more high-powered than expected, with the emergence of Kyle Potch and Mo White, who both dismantled records, single-season program records, goals and points and shots and assists and everything like that. To have those guys back for this season coming up with the talent you have coming in, how excited are you for the season coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we worked pretty hard at bringing some kids in. I think we brought in a lot more talent, a lot more depth. You know, we realized what we had this past year, we took a step up, but in the end we lost that last week because we didn't have the depth, we didn't have the quality. So right now we had 12 kids returning. We brought in 16 kids, which we've never done before.
Right.
12 of which are freshmen. So it's night and day where we've ever been, and the level of the freshmen is much better across the board than the level we've ever brought in.
Right.
And then obviously 3, you know, talented transfers, which helps a lot.
Of the newer guys that you brought in, names to me that stand out, guys like Adam Carnwath, the Englishman, Mario Ruiz, the Hofstra transfer, John Rochford and Raul Padilla, who are going to be your goalies backing up Tapetto as well. Who are the guys that in the early parts of training camp, preseason, and also spring ball? Because I know Sean Moore is a guy who joined your team in the spring as well, wasn't on the fall team, was on the spring team.
Right.
Those guys that we mentioned and others that are out there, who's impressing you in the first few days of camp so far?
I mean, there's a big list. I mean, so far so good. I mean, we're in the mix of trying to figure out what our lineup is. But you hit the nail on the head for the majority of it. Adam Carnwath transferred over from school in West Virginia, English kid. took a day to adjust just to get used to the time and the weather, because it was wicked hot when I picked him up on Sunday.
Right.
But he's been everything as advertised. Mario Ruiz, I mean, was a 3-year starter at Hofstra, scored a goal in the NCAA tournament this past fall. I mean, he comes over here with a lot of clout. I mean, he comes in as the as the best kid, an athlete that is, people watching this are gonna laugh. I put athlete and Mario in the same sentence. I wouldn't call him an athlete. He's a big-time soccer player with an engine that communicates, organizes. He's a captain in 5 seconds. He's not our captain. I don't even know who that is at this point, but
right.
He steps on the field, and he's the leader of the group.
Right.
And then you see Raul Bonilla, who transferred. We only figured out we were getting him this week, literally.
Yeah.
And he transferred him from Suffolk. We recruited him last year, and there's going to be some serious pressure on Steven Toppetto from Raul and from John, which is good. It's healthy competition, and I think we lacked that last year too. We struggled late in the year in goal, and I think Toppetto has come up big so far in preseason, so we're excited. And then a couple of the young kids have really stepped up. A kid, Angelo Berdenka, has done well, and a kid, Anthony Sestero, who really only played for the first day yesterday, is everything we expected him to be. And lastly, a kid, Michael Jimenez. We expect a decent amount from those three right away.
Right. Mario Ruiz from Hofstra, Kyle Potts transferred from Hofstra, George Sinecourt transferred from Hofstra. But you have a coach that I know very well, that I'm very excited coming in, Sean Foster, who was maybe one of the best center backs that I've seen play. He was an all-CAA center back. Now he's joining your coaching staff as well. To have a guy like that who knows that defensive mindset so well, and to have him on your coaching staff, how much of an advantage is that to you?
Yeah, Fozzie's been better than advertised, from the get-go. You forgot to mention also Tyler Body, who's been our first assistant for the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
And has helped change this program with what he is and what he learned from playing with Fozzie, and they're now best friends.
Right.
And that way it was the easy transition to get Sean. We tried to get him on the field, but unfortunately late figured out that he wasn't going to be able to play. Has added a tremendous amount to this program. Like our staff, when I'm talking, comes to athletic trainer all the way to all the assistants. I'll put our staff up against anybody. Just with we have a lot of fun, good people, work hard, here every day. So we can't ask for any more. So with that and all the players, we're looking forward to the season.
Right.
There's no question.
Let's now switch and talk about the women's team as well, because again, you're one of the few in this conference that does coach both teams. That team struggled a little on the offensive side last year, despite Danny Valente leading the team in goals and being the main offensive option once again. You lost not as many seniors from the men's team, but you lost quality seniors. Annette Mims, Alicia Mercurio, Christina Restivo, to name a few of them. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about more of them as well. That team that's going out and coming in, talk about the women's soccer team a little bit. What do you see out of them in their preseason so far?
Well, we have 5 seniors returning that I think have all been a huge part of this program since they came here. Gabby Batista, Courtney Noakes, Jess Malone, Gianna Genosa, and Danny Melende. All 5 of them have pretty much been mainstay starters for all 3 years. So to have those 5 kids back as starters, is key.
Right.
And then to have some pretty good young kids last year that we brought in, and then obviously with the incoming kids, we have a good nucleus coming back. You look at pretty much the 4 or 5 starters that we lost in Shannon, Christina, Gabby played goal,
right.
Mims and Alicia, where we replaced them, Gabby, who was an all-conference center back as a sophomore, had to play goal for us last year, unfortunately. She did a great job, but we missed her on the field, and it stunk, but it is what it is. She was a trooper and got it done, is now back to playing the field. So right away we get better there. She replaces Mims. Not that we get better, we're going to miss Mims, but an impact kid coming back who was all-conference as a sophomore.
Absolutely.
Brianna Wilson comes in as a lacrosse player to play goal, and she was a very good high school goalkeeper, and is an upgrade from what Gabby was last year. So we've solidified our center back and got better in goal. So right there we're better. And then with the incoming kids that we brought in, just to name a few, Amy's an incoming freshman. Girl Samantha in the middle is a transfer from Nassau, and a girl Caitlin, who we're going to play up top, just has rapid speed. Makes us a lot more dangerous with what we have with this group.
When you look at the stats from last year, and it's different teams, but you see that your men's team scored almost 3 times as many goals as the women's team did, does that kind of frustrate you when you look back at that, or do you have different ideas of why that was and how that'll be different going into this year? The women's team will be a little more prolific in goal scoring this year?
I do think that we'll be a little more prolific for the simple fact that I think we have a couple of kids that can take shots from further range, and I think that Caitlin's speed is going to scare teams, which is going to give Danny a little bit more time and space.
Right.
Because Danny has been the key factor for the last 3 years. You add someone up there with pace, it's going to change it. The difference between the two and the reason between them, I've had better soccer teams on the men's side than I had last year. There's no question. I've had better teams. I've never had the scoring that that team has.
Right.
You can't teach Mosiah White and you can't teach Kyle Potch.
Right.
And you add Lucas Munoz that we had last year.
Right.
I mean, there's 32 goals between 3 players.
Right.
So I had a team 3 years ago or 4 years ago that was the best team I probably ever coached, and we couldn't score. If we would have scored that year, we would have been in the regional in our sleep.
Right.
So there's not much that we do different. It's just we have 2 huge kids that score goals left and right on the men's side. And on the women's side, it's been left to Danny. And it's difficult when you have one kid that's going to score all your goals and everybody goes on, everybody marks her.
Right.
It really becomes a lot, it's difficult to score your goals. So
Sure.
hopefully with Caitlin added, that'll help the process of scoring some goals.
You touched on it briefly, so I want to talk about the goalie competition between Brianna Wilson and Tara Rosen. Both are somewhat familiar to the Molloy fans. Brianna had an amazing freshman year of lacrosse. Tara's older sister, Emily, is on the tennis team here, so they both come in knowing a little bit about that whole Molloy life and what you expect for them as well. And you mentioned not having Gabby in goal is going to be huge for you, but how do both of them stack up? Like, what have you seen from both of them in net so far? What do you think about going into the season with now 2 goalies on your roster and those 2?
Oh, it's great. I mean, we have 2 keepers that can play, and we have 2 keepers that can train. And I mean, unfortunately, Tara got a concussion, so she's out for a couple of days. And Bree, has been the mainstay so far. But Brianna's going to be the goalkeeper. Tara will be the backup. And I think it's just a huge upgrade. I mean, she's 5'8", 5'9". She's athletic. 1,000 point scorer in basketball in high school. Big time lacrosse player in high school and here. 2-time all-county goalkeeper in high school. So 3-sport athlete. She's used to this. She step right in and do what she does best. Win games. So hopefully, she does that, and we're happy, and she's happy, and we win some more games.
Let's talk a little bit about the schedule now for both your sides going in. You have great opponents coming in here. Franklin Pierce comes in on the men's side. Women's side, you go up to Merrimack for that first weekend trip. There's one team that's missing from the schedule, and you, as someone who's been in this conference, you know what I'm talking about. With what happened with Dowling, it's unfortunate for them. And is it unfortunate for you as well? Because you look at that schedule, you lose that one key rival, that one key opponent for conference play as well. How does that loss kind of affect you and kind of change the way that you look at these games going into it?
It stinks. It more stinks for personal relationships. I was very close friends with, and still am, with the men's coach, John DeRico, and the women's coach, Carrie McCabe.
Right.
Or I shouldn't say McCabe, Andres. Now she's married.
Right.
So that's difficult, because you don't see them as much. But it's just another game on the schedule, like every other game. What it does affect a little bit, from what I gather, I think arguably 3 of the best men's players ended up going to LIU Post, and I'd say 7 of the top 10 players from the women's program ended up going to New York Tech.
Right.
So how it affects us more than the rivalry with Dowling, which I enjoyed always, is now it's added 2 programs to even be better than they were.
Right.
So it's difficult, but it's more difficult for those kids, losing their school and where they went than anything else.
Right.
We'll make do and try and do our best when we play those teams.
On the men's side, you mentioned LIU Post, seeming that they're just rebuilding, but NYT has had a few good seasons recently. Bridgeport has Ivanovic coming back, who was up there with goals along with Kyle and Per Forgard from Post, and Roberts and Damon are still very tough in UDC and Stack as well. It's a very tough conference on the men's side. On the women's side, LIU Post again with what they have, but you mentioned NYT is now stacked with those girls, and Bridgeport with what Magnus has done up there too. If you look at the full conference slate, where do you see your team? Because the polls haven't come out yet for preseason. I know you don't really look at them or don't really care to look at those, but where do you see your team kind of mixing up? Because you have prolific teams on both sides, and on the women's side, Roberts shocked a lot of people last year and getting all the way to the conference final because they had a very good offense too.
Yeah, didn't shock any of us. I mean, they're the best player in the league.
Right.
So she's a beast. So you didn't mention Roberts, and you didn't mention Mercy, and
Right.
those are two big time programs. I mean, I don't know. We had on the women's side. We had 3 out of the top 6 in the region make the NCAA tournament last
Right.
year. So it's difficult for us to make the top 4. We got to make a big jump. We've pretty much done well against the bottom half of the league. We do pretty good against the middle, but it's those in between games, and then the top of the league we struggle. We somehow have to continue to beat the bottom half. We have to win all the middle games, and we have to steal one of the big ones. Like last year, for instance, Dowling's one of the ones that you got to win. We beat Dowling.
Right.
Damon on the other side, we think we should beat, and Damon beats us. Queens is the middle of the road one that it's going to go either way, and they beat us. So you swing either way. When we go into the game, we have to win that one. The middle one we have to win, and we got to steal one. So we're right there, but it's difficult. I mean, there's quite a few teams fighting. You got Queens in the mix. I mean, there's a lot of teams. So on the women's side, our goal is to make the conference playoffs. That's what it always is. And then you're 2 games away from an automatic bid.
Right.
On the men's side, it's a totally different animal. The conference playoffs mean something, but it doesn't mean the same because every game means the same. There's no automatic bid, so you need to schedule yourself appropriately with quality opponents, and hopefully they have good years so that your strength of schedule looks good, and that's the goal. Once you get to the regional, and I was at the regional when I was at Post, and I was at the regional my second year here.
Right.
That's your goal all the time. And we weren't there. We haven't been there since 2007. I always think that we have a shot, you know what I mean? Or realistically, you go back and forth. Listen, this team, we're a top 10 team in the region. I'm not scared to say it. We're a top 10 team in the region, Is top 10 good enough? No, top 6 is good enough. So we need to somehow figure out a way to beat everybody on our schedule, It plays out well for us on the men's side. I think 6 of our first 7 or 7 of our first 8 are home. You take care of home. And the one away game is Tech, who we've struggled with the last 2 years. We're 0-3 in 2 years. We could be in good shape, but obviously you don't look that far ahead. We got New Haven a week from Thursday, and we have to get a result. It's as simple as that. There's no ties, there's no losses. We need to figure out ways to win.
Right. You mentioned the first game for the men is at home on September the 1st against New Haven. First women's home game is the 6th, right before school starts against Caldwell, but you have Merrimack and Bentley in the opening of the tournament that first weekend as well, Labor Day weekend. More excitement, more just wanting to get those first games out of the way. What are you feeling about going into this season with those games?
Well, the men's side, like I said, we have so much depth, we have so much talent,
Right.
and we're ready. We'll be ready, no question.
Sure.
I think my women's program is better than we've been. There's no question at all. But we are light in numbers, and we're starting to break down a bit, and it's only day 4. So we scrimmage in New Haven this weekend, and we're not going to have many numbers, and that's our only scrimmage. We're not going to scrimmage again. We're going to take it light, and we're going to be prepared and be ready to go. And I think we're going to shock some teams. I really do. I think our women's program, with the speed that we've added, is the component that we have not had. And that speed alone is going to hopefully put a threat on other teams' defenses.
We're
So,
looking forward to it, Danny, as always. So thanks for the time. Best luck to you. Apologies to Tyler Body, of course, but thanks for the time. And again, best luck to you guys as you go forward.
perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.